Well, delighted to say that Policing Minister for the Home Office, Chris Philp, has joined us right now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much. I know you hot-footed it to Westminster. We'll get straight down to it. We've just been talking through what your boss, Suella Braverman, is going to say on migration. So she's basically saying it's absurd and unsustainable. Basically, we need to rewrite the Refugee Convention from 1951. Do you agree?
Yes, I mean, the elastic of the Refugee Convention has been successively stretched and stretched and stretched. It's designed, it was written in the aftermath of the Second World War with those horrors in mind, designed to protect people fleeing genuine, serious persecution, and yet it is now often used by people who are essentially economic migrants. That does need to be looked at. We've legislated in the UK already in our Illegal Immigration Act to say that if someone comes from France, an obviously safe country, by small boat to the UK, then in fact they can't claim asylum, and that has begun to work because this year so far the small boat crossings are down about 22% compared to last year, whereas across Europe illegal immigration has gone up. So our approach has begun to work. We need to go further, we need to get it down to zero, but it is reducing 22%. And I think what the Home Secretary is doing today is just beginning that same sort of conversation on a global scale. It is a global problem. Other countries have massive problems.
Well, we know
the US
America, it's a
have
huge...
had so far this month. Yeah, massive. So this month so far, this will horrify you, this month so far, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I think they've had 140,000 people cross the US southern border. We've seen what's happening in Europe with a couple of 100,000 people illegally entering Europe. So I think action is needed on a global scale to stop illegal migration.
Yeah, there's a massive issue in America. It's a massive issue across Europe. The question is, in this country, would a Conservative government, or indeed a Labour government, if they ever came to their senses, they do get elected next year, ever be able to do it? The House of Lords would try and stop you. The civil service, we know, within the Home Office would try and stop you. And, of course, the courts would try and stop you. That's what we keep seeing. You still haven't been able to enact the Rwanda plan, for goodness sake.
Well, look, we've made progress already. We've passed the Illegal Immigration Act. Small boat crossings are down about 22% this year compared to last year. Whereas, I know, but it's important. And whereas across Europe, illegal migration is rising, we are, I think, confident that when this Supreme Court case gets heard, I think it's going to be quite soon. We'll get the result in the next 2 or 3 months, pretty soon. We're confident that what we're doing is lawful and compliant. The Court of Appeal negative decision was on a very narrow, specific grounds about whether people would get transferred from Rwanda somewhere else, even though Rwanda have never done that, even though they've agreed in writing not to do that, even though the UNHCR themselves send refugees to Rwanda. Yeah. So, we're confident that very narrow issue can be addressed, and once we get that judgment, we'll be able to activate the Rwanda plan. And we've seen other examples, like Australia, where they sent people to Nauru, their illegal maritime arrivals went down to zero. Actually, in the last year in the UK, we've got a returns agreement with Albania, so we now send illegal Albanian immigrants straight back to Albania. As a result of that, Albanian illegal arrivals by small boat and otherwise have gone down by 90%, which shows that these return agreements and removal agreements do work.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll get to hear what her speech, what she has to say in her speech a little bit later on. Just want to ask you about some other big stories in the news. Russell Brand, he has claimed that basically there is a government and a mass, mainstream media conspiracy against him to try and shut him up, and other people speaking out against the World Economic Forum conspiracies and the like, but attempts to demonetise him and all of that. What did you make of your Tory MP colleague, Caroline Dinenage? She's chair of the Culture Select Committee, but acting of her own accord rather than with permission of all the committee members. Even then, I would find it unacceptable. Writing to social media companies last Thursday to say, why are you not demonetising this man? We believe in due process in this country. Russell Brand, whatever anyone thinks of him, before or after the first allegations were made, he's facing a Metropolitan Police investigation, but he has not been charged with any crime. He's been found guilty of any crime. He denies the allegations against him. What is a Tory MP and a committee chair doing? Telling social media companies to basically stop him from earning a living? Is she judge, jury and executioner?
Yeah, well, look, it's up to the members of the committee to talk to the chair, Caroline Dinenage, about that letter. It's not up to me as a government minister to sort of interfere.
You're a government minister in the Home Office, and you don't think it's up to you to have a say on the rule of law? No, look, I mean, No, I certainly think that's proper. I'm not going to get into select committee operations. Look, there's a police investigation going on. Due process is important. These things need to be properly
investigated, and if there's criminality, obviously there should be a charge and a trial and all the rest of it. So due process is important, but there's live proceedings, so I don't want to comment too much on a case that may end up before the court for obvious
what on earth was she doing? You don't want to comment. She's already made a judgment. She's decided he's a rapist.
Yeah, OK, look, I can speak for myself, and I've just done so.
OK, all right. Let's also talk about armed police officers. We saw, thankfully, the army having stood down after they'd been asked to be on standby for the 300 armed police officers in the Metropolitan Police. You said, we don't want to carry weapons. We don't want to be in a situation where we're doing our job, we shoot someone, and then we face criminal proceedings. This after the case of the officer who shot dead Chris Cabba in September in South London last year is now facing a murder charge. Now, we can't talk about anything to do with that case. As you say, we don't talk about live criminal proceedings. However, there's talk of this Home Office review, backing from Suella Braverman, certainly, and Sir Mark Rowley, the Met Chief, for this, of time limits for criminal and civil investigations, a higher threshold for charging an officer. Is that something that you would support? Do you think is necessary to keep the confidence of police officers carrying weapons?
Yeah, so just talking in general terms and not commenting on any particular case, as you say, the review is going to look at exactly those issues you just listed. Because they are important. It is vital that the police feel supported by the public and by the government and by the law as they go about their duties protecting us. Police officers every day put themselves in danger, armed officers and other officers put themselves in danger to protect us, and they must feel they can do that without fear of unreasonable or protracted investigation. Of course, obviously, if there is misconduct, that needs to be investigated, but it needs to be done in a way that is proportionate, that is reasonable and that is quick. And the review will look at that. It is essential police officers, as I say, have our support in protecting us. That's not to say they've got a free pass. Of course they haven't. Misconduct needs looking at. But the police do need our support. And the government and I, as Police Minister, will make sure they have that support.
And the stats are pretty clear. I mean, more than 18,000 instances in England and Wales last year, a typical year, actually, in terms of numbers, where armed officers were sent to the scene of an incident. And on only, this figure is staggering, 0.05% of the occasions when they were sent to an incident was a weapon actually shot at any point. I mean, there's no suggestion we have trigger-happy police officers in this country.
No, we're very fortunate in the UK that we have very few guns on our streets, very few indeed. One of the lowest death rates caused by firearms anywhere in the world, and our police officers very rarely have to use their firearms. And I think as a country, we're blessed that that's the case. Yeah. Very occasionally it's necessary, but the police officers, whether it's actually the use of firearms or indeed pursuing criminals, who are fleeing a crime, the police do need to have the confidence to use reasonable force, because if they don't, it'll be the public that end up not being protected as well as they should be.
Indeed. Just finally, very briefly, HS2, the Times is reporting that the Prime Minister is alarmed by the escalating scale of HS2 costs, and the executives have acted like kids with the golden credit card, and apparently the 30 billion to over £100 billion ballooning of costs is actually even far worse than anyone knows. Do you know how bad it is?
Well, I know the figures that you just quoted, that the forecast cost has gone up enormously, like roughly 3 times since it was first conceived. So just to be clear, firstly, no decisions have been taken on routes and timings at this point. But the cost, I know, does concern the Prime Minister and Chancellor. It's being funded by taxpayers' money, right? Your listeners and viewers pay their taxes, and that funds things like HS2. So it's vital we make sure that the cost overruns are controlled. Now, how that's done is being looked into at the moment, but no decisions have been made. OK, well, we shall wait and see what happens. Announcement before or after Tory conference. Chris Philp, Policing Minister in the Home Office, really appreciate you joining us there.